Check, 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 check. Oh, hey there. Thanks for tuning in to episode 26 of Wasted Local Talent. I am here with myself because people are sick and couldn't get into the studio, so got a couple things to talk about. We just launched our Patreon page, and that's at patreon.com/wastedlocaltalent. You can go over there and check out the different things we're offering, like custom ringtones to Wasted Local Talent swag, merch stuff thingies, some 13 palm trees things we're giving away, a mystery box, which could be anything, but it will always include an item from a local business or band. But yeah, there's lots of cool stuff over there. So if you want to go check that out, it's patreon.com/wastedlocaltalent. And don't forget to check out all of our other podcasts under the 13 Palm Trees shade. We have D&D Kinda, Video Game Mythos, and Gurus of Gaming podcast. Also, if you would, head over to Wild and Wonderful podcast on your favorite podcasting app and check out their new episode featuring us. Well, me from Wasted Local Talent and Roger from Gurus of Gaming. We did an episode with them and just released yesterday. So you should definitely head over there and check that out today. And also don't forget to check out Worst Kept Secret. These guys let us use their song Bender for our podcast, and we thank them for that. You can check them out on Instagram and Facebook at Worst Kept Secret WV, and search for them on Spotify, Bands in Town, iTunes Music, all that stuff. Stream Bender nonstop, so whenever they get their paycheck from Spotify and stuff, it's solely because of that song. You would make my day. Oh, I almost forgot. We just got word this week that Pat Cole is having a baby, and that he's definitely going to name that baby Bender regardless. He's actually going to change the baby's last name to Bender and name the baby Bender, 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 just because the song is just amazing. He told me that personally. He actually wrote me a handwritten letter telling me how excited he is to name his baby Bender. So congratulations, Pat, and your significant other. I don't know her name. I'm sorry. I forget. Something about Narnia and all that. Anyway, before we get to the episode, if you would just scroll down, hit subscribe, leave a comment, leave a review. It helps us here with our discoverability, helps us grow as a podcast. And since this podcast is free promotion for West Virginia bands and businesses, you're not only helping us, but you're helping everybody who is on the show with their exposure as well. So if you could, just give us a like, subscribe, leave a 5-star review or a 3-star review or a 1-star review, whatever. It doesn't, I mean, preferably not a 1-star, but 5 stars would be great. So if you could just do that, and we're going to go ahead and get to the episode. And this is Jason Lenox. This is our first ever Skype interview and our first ever artist that isn't from the area here. He's actually from a little bit north of here, up in Pennsylvania. But we met him at PopCon last year. He's a great guy. So we have our first Skype interview, so bear with us through this. And it's kind of an experimental thing. Hopefully we can do more Skype stuff in the future. Hopefully we can get it to sound a little bit better. But here we go. Here's Jason.
Hey, Dan, how you doing?
Good. How are you? Can you hear us?
I can. What's happening, guys?
Not a whole lot.
What is happening?
This is the first time we've done a Skype interview, so something new for us.
Cool, guys. Cool.
So,
well, hopefully my kids don't storm into the room and trash it, but we should be good to go.
Yeah, I think we'll be all right. So, I don't know how to introduce this one. I mean, this is something new that we've never done before. So we're actually live on Skype with Jason. And Jason, you're an illustrator, correct?
That is correct.
And what kind of art and things do you do? We talked to you at PopCon, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep, that's correct, guys. We talked. That was last August at West Virginia PopCon.
Mm-hmm. And are you actually gonna, before we get started, are you gonna be there this year?
Well, I hope. It's a little bit of an awkward situation this year because they set a schedule, and then our family based our planning around the schedule that John gave us for the show, and then it just changed.
Yeah, I saw where they changed the dates recently, so
I should be able to go, but we will know for sure by the end of March.
Cool. Yeah, I hope that you can make it back up, because I think that we're going to go ahead and get another booth this year as well, and we can do like a follow-up with you there if you're there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a great show. It's one of those things that John got clipped by the venue. What happened was, I guess they decided to schedule a country music hoedown the weekend that he had scheduled the show.
Travesty.
Which I guess part of me says, can you just say, hey guys, I got a better deal than you, you're out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so John's a super guy. I think he kind of got punked a little bit by the venue. So I'm going to say I'm about 90% sure I'll be there this year. I'll know by the end of March. So yes, that's the plan.
Cool. So tell us a little bit about what you do. Give us like a rundown of your business and what all it entails.
So I do a couple different things. I generate art. So it goes into a couple different subcategories. So I try to put out one comic about once a year. So what I've been doing now for the last couple of years is my science fiction fantasy comic, Lords of the Cosmos. So we're working on issue 3 for that right now. Issue 1 and 2 are out, so they're available. Okay. So that's one thing that I do with my comics. And then I do freelance illustration work for clients. So right now I'm working on an album cover for a client that I guess should remain confidential until it's done. I do project. It's a secret. Hopefully we can talk about it in our follow-up interview in August. So I'm working on that right now. I've done work for a company called Off-White, who's a fashion company in Italy. So I just had a piece of art in Paris. It was in a Paris runway show for their clothing late last year, early this year. So I have that going on. It's kind of another kind of completely different segment of what I do. And then I make a lot of mythology artwork, which is a whole nother segment as time allows. And then I have a whole nother I guess subcategory of occult and satanic art that I do. And one of the things that I'm hoping that goes to is making a satanic coloring book.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
That would be.
Yes.
I just had a meeting with an offset printer about that, and I was shocked with the pricing I could get to make a black and white coloring book. I'm not sure when that's going to happen. I'm thinking maybe by the end of this year, early next year for that. I have a couple things I have to button up with that project. So, those are the basic project revenue stream things that I create. I do about a dozen comic book shows a year, so I get out and try to do that. But that's kind of generally, what I do and my general business model.
Cool. That satanic coloring book sounds really interesting.
I love that.
Yeah.
I for one love that.
Yeah.
I've been putting out satanic and occult artwork for the better part of the last 3 years, and there's so much of it now, and a lot of it people see in black and white, and then they're like, will that be a coloring book? And you have to. I try to walk a fine line. I don't like people just to start telling me what to do like I'm a trained chimp.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it is important to listen to what the market's telling you, and I've had people say that so much that I've kind of taken it to heart to say, if this many people are saying it, it's probably not a bad idea.
Yeah.
They're going to buy it easily.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a really neat idea. I mean, it's like a lot of artists and illustrators and stuff that do their own stuff, but to actually put out almost like an interactive, it's something that they can interact with your own art, like a coloring book, is really cool.
And it makes it kind of cheeky and fun.
Yeah.
It's like you can put the satanic drawing that you colored with vibrant Crayola crayons up on your refrigerator, and it makes it fun.
So, right now with that, it's in a state of almost completion because there's so much of that material that's just done and sitting in digital folders. And I sell colored prints of a lot of that at shows. But, then the idea is, can you put it together and are the sum of the parts, greater than they are all individually? And I think in this case they are, and I think, the fans with their comments, I think they're right. So, and like I said, I was curious when I met with this offset printer last week. Well, how much does this cost? Is it realistic? And after I met with the general manager at KB Offset in State College, I was like, this seems very, very plausible. So I'm hoping that's another thing that I have going on. So there you go. There's a kind of a very well, and actually there's one other thing that I've been doing. I've been making a lot of, I guess, art based on fiction. So I've been doing a lot of Animal Farm artwork in the last couple months too. So
that's awesome. A good one. Yeah, that's a good one.
So
so a lot of pigs in suits and pigs walking dogs.
It's like watching Jed walk his dog.
There it is.
Had to throw a joke in there, but so is this the first coloring book that you've done?
Yeah, I've never done one before. I'll be honest. I thought at first when people were saying it, I thought the whole idea was stupid, and then I started to understand that the adult coloring book market is, whether I think it's stupid or not, is hugely popular. And the other thing that I found that is the more niche you make your material, the more popular it is, and there have been some fabulous successes with adult coloring books. So I kind of tempered my attitude from that's stupid to that's a pretty good idea.
Yeah.
And I did some homework. I actually went on Amazon to see if this has been done like 800 times. And the interesting thing is that it's only been done once, and the guy that did it, and you can go Google it on Amazon. It's about the laziest effort. All he did was he went to like a lot of popular horror films and just screen capped stuff and put a black and white filter on it.
Oh, really?
Oh, that's weak.
Yeah.
You're gonna kill it. Right. You're gonna blow that out of the water, man. That's weak.
And I think people were buying it thinking that they were going to get something really cool. They didn't even know what, but they thought, I want to be excited. I want to see something original.
Yeah.
From what people were saying was that all it was like, hey, I'll just freeze frame Rosemary's Baby on my computer, screen cap it, and throw it on a Photoshop filter.
Yeah.
Which is, one, it's totally unoriginal. Two, it's probably not that good for coloring if even if you did freeze frame movies and just clip it, it's not. You want to have really sharp line work to do that.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And not just here's a picture of the lady from, Exorcist screaming with a filter where it's just a lot of the gray tones and just black masses. So
yeah. That'd be like almost as bad as like the coloring books that they have for Star Wars where it's a stormtrooper and Darth Vader. It's like, what the fuck are you supposed to do with that? like, get out of here. I can't color this. It's already colored. Yeah. So...
Right. So no, that's what's up. I mean, it's not. It's a very strong concept in my head, and I do believe that unless something horrible happens to me, it will happen. I have a couple pieces of art to do, and then I guess kind of on an aside to that, I enjoy Twitter. I think Twitter is a very exciting place. If you guys aren't on Twitter, it's pretty fun. And I was approached by a lady from Seattle named Lady Vi, and you can look her up if you're feeling adventurous. And she's gutting part of her house slash workspace to put a satanic worship area in her home, and
like open to the public.
I guess you know what, I don't know. I can't answer. I don't know, but she reached out to me and said she said I Googled satanic stained glass, and you're the top guy in like the whole world. You're
wow.
So that made me laugh. And then she commissioned me to make a piece for her space at her home. And I asked her, I said, well, look, I have a pretty good idea what you want. Can we put it in the coloring book? And, she was like, well, hell yeah. And
so you do stained glass work as well? Yeah.
If you look at a lot of my satanic stuff, like, I've been plunking creatures and characters into these kind of like vague environments with like satanic stained glass as kind of like the elements in the background, like they're in some kind of church.
Okay.
So yeah, and then I just did a big piece. It was 34 inches square where there's a big coat of arms for the devil. I did a bunch of research on heraldry and created a satanic coat of arms, which again, there was only one guy I found in the whole world that even really took a stab at it, who's a really talented guy called Paul Baumer, and he had made a satanic coat of arms about 8 years ago, and I let him see what I was making, and he was like, "Dude, I think it's great, man. It's awesome. Good job, hail Satan." So, So yeah, no. So all those things are going to be in there. But this lady had reached out. She was super sweet, and she bought a whole bunch of church furniture from, I guess, a demo church job, and she is going to have a satanic place of worship at her house. Is it open to the public? I don't know, but I know that I've been commissioned to do some new original artwork, and I think that's going to be the final piece for the coloring book. Once we'll put that in the coloring book as like the last puzzle piece, so to speak.
That'd be really cool.
Full circle.
Yeah. You don't really hear a lot about, colored books in general, like from artists, and the whole satanic side of thing, like the taboo side of things is something that I don't really know too much about, but I think it's like a really interesting take on art, especially if you're being commissioned to do like stained glass for somebody's, I'm assuming that if she's building this, it's going to be open, probably not to the public, but to like people that she knows. I think it's a really cool, concept to it. And I wonder if they'd put like in the back of the pews, your coloring book right there for anybody who comes to visit that.
We'll have to let her hear this.
There you go.
Maybe she'll do that. But so it's, one of the things that I tell people, and I'd mentioned this to a friend of mine that does art. I said, a lot of what I do, I'm like a farmer. I try to rotate crops. So when I do my devil art, that's a whole different vibe. It's a different feeling, versus my book art, versus my mythology art, versus my Lords of the Cosmos art, because I tend to get sick of any one of those things after a while. So it's nice to, switch it up, to talk about my weird science fiction Lords of the Cosmos world versus, hey, let's talk about like these weird devil creatures and their kind of environment, because each one of these worlds, the more I make, they're more immersive. And, one of the things that was funny with the Animal Farm stuff is it's very not fantastic. It's a lot of farm buildings and animals that you see every day, but then trying to put kind of a weird, either menacing or violent spin on them. So one of the things that I got sucked into was that there's the 7 laws of animalism, right? And this is the exciting fan art. Other people are drawing Black Panther and Groot. I'm drawing George Orwell. But like animalism has 7 laws. So it's like animals shall not drink alcohol is one of them. And so one of the things that I wanted to do was to draw, all the animalism rules being basically lampooned by activities of the animals. So for the thou shalt not drink alcohol, I really wanted to draw one of the pigs walking a dog, because they have dogs in the book, but kind of like a world after the Book of Animal Farm. And I tried to draw a distillery, and it stumped me because drawing barrel after barrel on racks was one of the hardest things I ever did. And I called Uncle. I couldn't do it. So then I started going full hillbilly on the internet, and I started researching homemade stills. And I ended up drawing a outdoor whiskey distillery with this dog and this pig, and then a big outbuilding with the rules scrawled with paint on the building. And I find those things to be refreshing because they're just very simple. They're very not fantastic. But getting sucked into the world of hillbilly whiskey manufacturing was fascinating. And I had a young lady that was from Kentucky that talked to me in January at a comic show in Pennsylvania. And she looked at it and said, "That's a whiskey still." And she goes, "That's pretty damn realistic." And I was like, "Where are you from?" She's like, "Kentucky. We have that stuff around us." And I was like, "Crap." I'm like a real Southern person looked at this and identified it as a still.
I'm glad that was Kentucky and not West Virginia, because we get that stigma all the time.
West Virginia, but no, it's fun to kind of rotate into those things. In the Animal Farm stuff, especially, is very much kind of like cleansing the palate, where you're just basically drawing animals at a farm. But again, there's kind of a twisted, menacing undertone to all of that, which is fun. Versus my comic book Lords of the Cosmos, which is just fantastic weird stuff stacked on fantastic weird stuff, and it's very kind of dark 80s sensibility, again. So it's fun to switch all those things up and just to keeps me fresh.
Yeah. So as far as your art goes, do you do you draw by hand and do like Photoshop things, or how's your process of creating?
So what I try to do is do everything by hand. I've tried to learn to use Photoshop as kind of a helping tool where, for example, if I'm making things that are really big, I will make them small on paper and scan them and play with them on a virtual large board, which is really cool because it helps me try to figure out where stuff should go. And then I used to hand ink just about everything, and then we had a second child 4 years ago, and while he's a wonderful little boy, he's very non-productive to getting work done. Kind of hit a point then where I realized that I only had so much time and I had less of it. So at this point, I do work with digital inkers. One is in Spain and the other's in Mexico, where I typically will finish things to a certain point with pencils, and then I'll send them high-resolution scans to take it from there. And then I work with several digital colorists to color it from there. If I had more time, it would be probably more fun to hand ink everything. But as I would tell anyone, there is a real issue of the most valuable resource we have is time, and you have to really look at it partially to say, if I have so many hours in a week, and in a month, I can either make 4 things fully in pencil or 1.5 in ink.
Yeah.
You pick. And, some people are going to say, no, you should do everything yourself. And that's cool. And then other people would say the traditional comic book model says you have a penciler, you have an inker, you have a letterer, and a colorist, and working as a team is about speed and efficiency, and there's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, as long as you're crediting people for their work, which obviously, I do that. So I've chosen the route to say I will take what little time I have to make as many things as possible. And if I have to rely on others to help me finish, so be it. To me, that's more important than saying, well, I did half the amount of work this year, but I did everything.
Yeah.
Well, and you also kind of, you strike me as somebody who needs a lot of things going on at once, because you sound like you're juggling quite a few tasks. And as you said, if you stick with one of them for too long, you kind of get tired of it and you have to move on. So
it's an interesting comment you make there, and I'll attempt to clarify it. I do have a lot of things going on, but at the same time, I do try to employ a very systematic organization method to really only be working on 1, maybe 2 projects at the same time, because if you get too many things started before they're finished, I find you get into a quagmire where nothing gets done.
Yeah. I've been there.
So what I do, it's as simple as I keep a legal tablet on my drafting board where I have the next 10 projects that I want to do. And I just cross them off at the top, and then I have an idea book with hundreds of ideas in it. And then as something goes off the top 10 list, I will pull something out of the idea book.
Okay.
Because if you get slugged into too many things, you will hit a point where nothing's getting done. One thing people will say about me is like, you always get things finished. And it is key to get things done where it's not like, well, I've got 10 things that I've got cooking.
Yeah.
I like to just get things complete. So when I have all these projects, whether it's comic books, coloring books, whatever, they're all in a queue to get done in a certain order. So in my mind, there's different goals to hit. But right now, my goal is to finish this album cover because it's been going on longer than I had originally anticipated due to some reworks on it. And then after that, I have to dig down into this commission for this lady in Seattle, and then I have to immediately get back to getting our comic book issue 3 to the point where it's going to be done.
Okay.
So in my mind, that's really kind of where, it's like focus on this, get it done, focus on this, get it done, focus on this, get it done. Because again, unless you have unlimited time, you have to be very careful to not get your involvement in too many things. You have to focus on completion.
Yeah, and I'm not a very creative person myself, but I can imagine that working on the different types of projects that you are, that artistically are just so significantly different from each other, that if you were to work on too many of those at once, I could see kind of the creativity bleeding into the other projects and then maybe kind of blurring the lines of how they differ from each other.
Yeah, that's a good point. And one thing that I've picked up on over the years, and it's something that I grow tired of artists that I see that they'll just do the same thing.
Right.
And you can even catch guys that are pretty famous doing the same basic thing, even down to like composition and like content, where they're just doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. And it can be smart where they've hit a chord where if they do a certain thing, people like it. And the masses can reward that. And I get that, but I find it to be creatively dead just to do the same thing. So it is fun to challenge yourself to say, I've never drawn, fill in the blank, a tractor, a crab, a spider, or whatever that is, and to force yourself just to not draw the same. Well, like drawing a guy with a sword from the same point of view over, well, okay, could you do something else? So I do also like to mix it up just to challenge myself, so I'm not doing the same thing. And it can lead to problems, because when you move out of your comfort zone in new territory, it can get pretty tough. One of the hardest things that I got involved with last year was I did a big poster for a friend for a project that had a submarine in it. And I got involved with drawing a World War II era German submarine. And that was one of the hardest things that I've ever gotten involved with, to the point where I actually bought a model, a physical model, and then I ended up buying a 3D rendered model of the submarine.
Oh, wow.
And they're some of the most complicated machines,
yes,
I think. They're crazy. And then putting it in an underwater environment. And I'm really in love with the finished product, but it was very difficult, and it really took me out of my comfort zone. But that was the point, to kind of mix it up. And even while I was creating it, I was kind of like sucked into this whole world where I was watching Das Boot and listening to like German music, because I was really trying to put my head in things where like it was like we are with the German Navy. And then the way my brain works is I was like completely immersed in this whole like German Navy submarines, like whatever. And then when I finished it, my brain just kind of like dumped it, and I kind of exited that world. And you move on to something else. But it is difficult to, again, if you tried to blur too much of that, because to me, I guess it's kind of like method acting, where it's like, if you're going to do this, like really try to like get into that space. If you're doing science fiction stuff, maybe listen to some futuristic music, sit and read content that's similar, get your head in the right space. And it isn't easy just to like get in and out of that, because when you're in it, you're in it.
Yeah.
It's very rewarding though, right? I mean, I know in my field of work, working in IT, one of my favorite things is being able to take on a system that I've never handled before, and kind of learn the ins and outs of it and figure out how to use it. So I imagine that as an artist, finding a style or an object that you've never drawn, and then being able to immerse yourself in it and come up with a final product that you're as satisfied with as you are, that has to be extremely rewarding.
Well, it is. It's a huge excitement to get it done, especially when people like it. The hard part is going through it and screaming and tearing things apart. Putting work in, and with that project in particular, the art was set in the Pacific Ocean, and I had originally done it, and I put it in a World War II group that I was kind of chit chatting with about it, and on Facebook, and this guy chimes in and he said, "Well, you've drawn a Type 7 U-boat, and those are what's called an Atlantic wolf pack. And if this is set in the Pacific Ocean, they would use a Type 9, which is a totally different vehicle.
Oh, wow.
So what you've drawn is wrong." And I was like, oh man, really? And I went and looked it up, and everything the guy said was right. And then I stared at it for like 3 days, and then I destroyed it, and then I redid it with this whole new submarine, which is like twice as complicated.
I didn't know that they had different submarines for different oceans. That's weird.
Well, again, let's go down that rabbit hole. World War II podcast. There's like 39 types of U-boats, and they were like for whatever. And the one that went to the Pacific Ocean had like larger engines, and it also had aircraft guns in the top, because it had to resurface to do things on the surface, like with fuel and oxygen or whatever. So it was important that it couldn't get shot at without being able to fire back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because if I remember correctly, the Germans were actually blockaded from taking their normal route to the Pacific Ocean, and I think they had to go an alternative way, which was significantly longer.
Are you the guy from that Facebook page? Seriously, what's going on?
No, I just
39 types. So you're just like, isn't there like a submarine? They're like, no, they had 39 kinds, and there's a million variations. You start falling down these rabbit holes, and then people are picking you apart, saying, "Well, that's not right." And yeah, so I mean, like you kind of wear it like a badge of honor. Like I survived my adventure with the German Navy for 2 months, and like they'll mail me a campaign ribbon. for successfully completing it. But seriously, I mean, whatever you would, you hit it right in the head. If you master a new app or a program, there is a satisfaction in mastering something new, and there's a lot of pride in that if you're an actual creator. And you could be a creator of dance, you could be doing art, you could be doing IT. I think it's just the challenge that you appreciate.
Yeah, otherwise it just gets stale, and then you just lose interest.
I noticed that with music. Like I write a lot of music, and it's the same way. Like I get stuck in this funk where like every song I'll start kind of the same way, and it'll have the same kind of build up into a chorus or whatever, and then end kind of the same way. Then I'll listen back through like all these 10, 15 songs that I've written, and it's like the same format. And listening to them back to back, it's like listening to the same song, whether it's in a different key or not, it's the same structure, and it gets old and stagnant. So from any form of like art, I can definitely see that, sticking with something, and doing the same the process over and over and over again would get, stagnant. And I've seen a lot of artists do the same thing, that commission their art, that you ask them like, hey, could you do it like I love your art style, but could you do this? And they're like, no, I don't know how to do it like that. It's like, you see a lot of people that are stuck in that, like their comfort zone, and it's tough for them to get out of it because they're not used to having to do that. So it's kind of cool to see somebody that's willing to actually go out of their comfort zone to try new things and actually do the research to make it better. And I think that's awesome.
Well, yeah, it's one of those things that sometimes it can be sad because you can put a pile of effort into some of these things, and then people are just like, do you have a drawing of Deadpool eating a taco? Yeah. so there's kind of a sad disconnect between like higher end creativity and then kind of like the quote unquote lowbrow masses.
Yeah.
Where they will oftentimes reward the worst kind of material. So if you watch comic conventions for a long time, there's a weird, almost like secret logic to them where there's people that just straight up plagiarize stuff. And people are just like, oh my God, can I throw money at you harder?
Yeah.
People that are really doing some neat stuff and like no one cares. And I'm not saying that's always the case, but there's a lot of eye rolling that I see at these shows where I'm just like, what is going on? And I've seen that for years to the point I'm just kind of tuned out to it. But you can see it even at the smallest shows where there's some real eye rolling stuff. But it's interesting you guys have picked up on that with arts where it's like, look, this is just what I do. And like, it's kind of like churned out assembly line. They're not like deep diving into some of this stuff. But they may not have the time. They may not have the resources to do it. I mean, full disclosure, I have a full-time job in the heating and cooling industry. So this isn't my full-time job. So it does give freedom to slow down and do things at kind of a more slow academic pace versus like, I have to get this done or they're going to turn my power off. So I do respect that you got to look at everyone's situation. And if you have a guy that like, this is like his only source of income and it's just like, I got to do this or I'm not going to eat. You can't bang him too hard, but dude, if I can draw these Deadpool taco things really fast and people buy them. So why should I learn anything else? I get it.
Where do you have to like run into any kind of like copyright stuff with that? Like, have you ever found yourself in a situation like where somebody's commissioned you to do something like so mainstream that you'd have to actually get like any kind of licensing to do it? Or is it, I don't know if you go ahead. I was gonna say, I don't know if you want to like, put that out there, for people to say, because,
No, the only time I ever got questioned on that, and it was once, was when I opened my Etsy store, whatever, like a year ago. I just put all the fan art prints that I put all my art on there. Yeah. And I guess it was, well, I won't say the name, but a large animation company, I guess they just do sweeps on Etsy. And I won't say which animated property, but I had heard people say that this one in particular people will hit on. And they just sent me a thing saying like, we are questioning this. You can't have this. So so at that point, I just pulled anything that wasn't original Jason stuff off of Etsy, which was about maybe about a dozen pieces. I just pulled them off. Nothing came of it except they just sent me an email saying we're just saying you can't do this.
Yeah. Cease and desist.
Yeah.
It was basically a very gentle cease and desist. which I was cool with that. And I'll give you my quick take on that question because it's a good one. So, in the world of amateur to pro art, if you look at like the people that are closer to amateur and farther away from pro, they will tend to have almost exclusively fan art. Hey, here's Darth Vader. Hey, here's Deadpool. Here's Black Panther. Here's Groot. Typically go for whatever's popular.
Yeah.
And they kind of get a little bit of fake heat because they'll move material. Because people are like, hey, man, I love Groot. What's popular? Killmonger. Captain Marvel will be a popular film. And I think you'll see a ton of Captain Marvel fan art, which you never saw any. When was the last time you saw any? None. But Marvel, that film. And it looks like a good movie, and I think it'll be popular. And you'll see a lot of people grinding out very basic Captain Marvel fan art. And here's the dirty truth. You could have as much fan art at a convention as you've ever wanted. I've never heard of anyone being told, hey, Marvel's here. They said hi, that Captain America art. You can pretty much do that unabated, and no one cares. Then there are some artists that hit a point where they're like, dude, that's weak. I don't want to have anything that's not mine. I want to sell based on me as a brand. And I'm going to destroy his name, but he's a very nice man. Jamal Igle or Igle. Does that ring a bell?
No.
No. It's a Jamal, and his last name is Igle. And I met him once. He was a very sweet person. He was very polite, very nice. And I apologize if he hears this because I know I just shredded his name up. But Jamal had put a thing out on his blog a couple years ago basically saying, I'm not going to have any fan art. Unless it's my property or I've worked on it in an official capacity, I'm only going to sell Jamal Igle stuff. And, I really thought, this guy really, he's paid his dues. He's worked doing this stuff forever. His stuff's really, really good. And he's basically saying, I'm going to make less money now, but to me it's more important to, at this point, only promote me. I don't need a crutch, which is really what fan art is. It's a crutch.
Yeah.
I tipped my cap. I thought this guy's pretty cool. I mean, he actually has enough balls to stand behind himself as a brand to say, I don't need Groot, Darth Vader, Deadpool, the Taco, and whatever. And when you see Jamal, you know that Jamal's basically promoting Jamal.
Yeah.
Now, all that being said, I still have fan art. I do. However, I try to skew mine more towards bizarre, obscure things. So my fan art, and I probably have about, I don't know, 30 pieces that I still bring to shows that's fan art, but it's more obscure 80s films like The Fly, They Live, all my Animal Farm art, which I guess is fan art, but that newsflash, that becomes public domain next year, so I guess anyone can have it. I have do androids dream of electric sheep fan art, RoboCop fan art. My fan art tends to skew into these bizarre nooks and crannies that I really like. I do have a Thanos thing that I made for a person that I've sold as a print for years. I don't think I've hit the point where I can get rid of those things, but at this point, oddly, my biggest sellers now at shows, if we just want to talk art and popular, I made 3 little cats with satanic pentagrams behind them and satanic symbols. Those things have blown away everything else that I sell now.
Cat people.
So I've really, really tried to do as much original art and back away from the fan art as much as I can. And like I said, even the fan art that I'm burning out now is Animal Farm really even fan art?
Yeah. It's
it's from a 7-year-old book.
Yeah.
So, again, has anyone ever clipped me on it and said, by God, Jason, the RoboCop rights holder said you can't have that ED200? Just that one time on Etsy. And I think the big animation companies, from what I've heard, are pretty damn serious about that stuff. And I guess they do prowl a lot of those sites looking for it, and they just hit out C&Ds. Whereas U.S. publishers, the only one I'd ever heard of was, and I can't think of the guy, Adam Hughes. I had heard that Adam Hughes was doing Wonder Woman covers, and he was doing limited edition prints at shows, and I guess it was just insanely popular, and I guess it was so profitable that I guess DC had to have a talk about saying, hey, you got to cut us back in. That's what I heard. Wow. But again, if that's true, which I believe it to be true, he's a super big name, and maybe he was making a tremendous amount of money. And it's like, okay, at that point, DC was like, dude, if you're making tens of thousands of dollars every weekend off this stuff, maybe you got to slice us in on the till because we're already paying you to make these for our covers. I had heard that a couple years ago, and I'm like, okay, so that's the point you piss these guys off, where it's like you're making like crazy money off their stuff that they've already paid you for in a big official releases. So
yeah.
So there was my big lengthy answer to a very simple.
You know, I like that description though, because fan art. Some fan art I get into, but the fan art that always really grabs me is whenever somebody will take fan art and then instead of just, you know, oh, here's the Green Power Ranger, like they'll take it and they'll make it their own. Like some of my favorite fan art prints that I bought at a con, and I'm gonna laugh if I bought them from you because it's very possible. But they were Pokemon prints, and it was like whoever it was, I can't remember who it was that did it now. But he had taken them and just made them like real creepy, like really disturbing and creepy looking. But you could obviously tell what they were. Like, oh, this is a Charizard, this is a Blastoise, this is Mewtwo. Sure. But they were just, it looked like if, you know, Tim Burton were to make a Pokemon movie, that's what these things would look like.
That should be a thing.
Yeah, and here's the thing: like I love Blade Runner, and a couple years ago, there was a guy selling these really unique Blade Runner posters that he'd made, and I have one. I'm looking at it right now because she's staring at me. It's Pris holding a doll, and she's like kind of crouched over, and it's just a really well done thing. So like again, I'm not gonna sit here and say if you do fan art, you're bad, and I would never buy it. Like, dude, I like fan art too. But again, it is a great question about what is the deal with copyright, and have you ever gotten scolded? There may come a day where DC or Marvel will get angry for whatever reason, maybe because of Disney, and
very likely.
What they may do is they just may go hit some of these huge Comic Cons like Emerald City and New York and San Diego and hit a couple artists with C&Ds and be like, if we catch anyone selling Batman stuff, we're going to sue them.
Yeah, and you got to think too about, you know, what is the input to output there, because to send somebody to these cons to in person go around to these prints and determine, you know, what is considered to be copyright and what isn't, it takes a lot more work, a lot more effort, probably a lot more money than just creating an internet crawler to, you know, crawl through these well-known websites and look for certain things.
Sure. But again, I'm just trying to give you my overly, see, it's because of the submarine training, right? It's like, you asked, like, we're going into like, well, let's talk about the legal ramifications of sending an attorney. But I mean, ultimately, you know, what I find more interesting with artists, and I try to judge myself to this, is how much stuff are you doing that if all that stuff went away, what would you have left? You know, and to me, if you're like, well, I wouldn't have anything, it kind of tells me you're not really creative. Like, go make up your own ideas. Like, what is your idea? You know, and that's a question I would ask any writer or artist to say, like, tell me about your idea. Like, what do you have in your brain that excites you?
Yeah.
And why should it excite me? Which I guess this is the part of the interview where I slam you guys and say, have you done your homework and read all your Lords of the Cosmos PDF comics? Have you done that?
So we actually, on purpose, never do homework. That's actually one of our things. Yeah.
Good.
We like to know, well, I do. I think Daniel probably does the most homework out of any of us. But personally, I like to do the least amount of homework whatsoever. Usually my homework, like just today, consists of when I'm sitting down in the chair, I say, okay, who are we interviewing and what do they do?
He likes to say it's homework, but he's just lazy.
So, yeah, I try to know as little as possible because I feel like it gives me more of a fresh take on the interview, and it lets me organically come up with questions as we go through.
Yeah,
So I guess I'll dial it back because that's like the greatest built-in excuse ever. I have to try that. So I'm more than happy to sit and filibuster about my comic book, but have any of you actually read it yet? And if so, do you have questions or just a comment? And then I can just tell you about it, and I can do your homework for you.
I haven't. I don't think that I have. I don't know if I've got him here. I know we've got a bunch of stuff from the PopCon, but I don't know if any of the stuff that we have is your work, honestly.
So my job has got to be to give you like a little elevator speech to get you excited. Then I'll shoot you all the PDFs.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Beautiful.
So I've been burning out comic books now since 2011, just a lot of like short stories and kind of one-off things. And then I had an idea after I looked at DC's relaunch of Masters of the Universe, which for the record I thought was abysmal. I hated it with a burning fire, 1,000 suns. And I just started working out in my head, like, how cool would it be if I could work on Masters of the Universe, which the chances of that happening are probably zero. I reached out to a buddy of mine around 2013-ish saying, hey, what if we got together and started throwing something that would be like a concept idea for a genre piece like Masters of the Universe? And his name was Jason Palmatier, so he's a great guy because we had the same name. It's easy to always remember his name. And then he said, well, hey, could we bring my buddy in on this because he's a super 80s nerd and he actually does TV stuff in Los Angeles. And I said, sure. And his name's Dennis Fallon. And then over the course of 2013 and 14, we just started basically kind of spitballing an idea together. And we called it Lords of the Cosmos, which we just wrote Masters of the Universe on a sheet of paper and pulled a thesaurus out and just started like getting alternate words.
Yeah.
We wanted it to be like that. And then we just started really talking about what was it? What was that genre? And we started to look at things that we felt were similar, like Masters of the Universe, Thunder the Barbarian, what else? Flash Gordon, the old classic 30s.
Oh yeah, Flash Gordon.
We said this is really a genre called science fiction barbarian because there's this kind of like futuristic magic kind of adventure feel to all those properties. And so we just started saying, well, now what? And then I sat down, and this was at Wizard World Philadelphia 2014, and I just started making up logos. Like there was a hero logo and a villain logo, and then I designed a very 80s looking creature to be the main bad guy, kind of the Skeletor, trope.
Yeah.
And then once we had that, these two guys started to build a Bible of characters, and they just said, here's a whole bunch of villains and a whole bunch of heroes, just kind of like just filling in slots like on the back of a toy checklist. And I spent a lot of time just making these big pinups of all these creatures and people and characters and kind of godlike entities. And we said, oh, cool, now we have like 15 pinups of like all these things, like doing stuff and like kind of being in their little groups. And then in a horrible creative, you would always say this is the worst way to do it, I just started building comic book pages around these pinups, which with no script. And we just started just kind of pushing out with no story, no script. Outside of we had this idea, we had an ending. Like, that's all we had was like a 2-page ending. We were like, this is where we're going to go. Hit 2 pages. We're the reverse of Lost. We had nothing on the front. And we started just saying, let's just kind of make this work. And we worked and worked and worked. And then we had all these ideas, too many ideas like we talked about before. And we started pushing towards making Lords of the Cosmos 1 in 2016. And we had so many ideas in the back end that we started bringing other artists and writers to start kind of filling out the spaces we didn't have time for. And then when that book came out, we basically used half the pinups to kind of like be the character intro around a very loose story of like this world called Aiden that we just started kind of mishmashing together like Eternia. And we started launching this main story. And then that issue had 3 additional stories kind of like doing these little spotlight tales of, some of the creatures that were involved in it. And the feedback on that book has been, I'll be fair, it's been mixed. Some people really love it. Some people are like, there was too many pinups in the first story, and I didn't like that. And they're like, all right, well, yeah, here's the backwards creative process we did. But we just said, we got to keep going. And because we loved it so much, and the more we worked on it and the more we involved other people, we really started seeing a bigger vision for it. And, to be totally honest, like we gave a lot of people a very big blank sheet of paper and like a Rorschach test, all the writers and letterers and artists and colorists that started asking a lot of questions. And we took a lot of their comments and questions to heart and started building out a Bible and a bigger story, and plots and story points started coming organically from all these people, literally Rorschach testing the 80s.
Oh, wow.
From our point of view. And then we did the second issue, which came out in, right around the time for West Virginia PopCon last year. So I had issue 2 and 1 with me, and same thing. It had another 20 pages of this kind of like main story, and then we had 3 more stories, kind of fleshing out more and more of the world, flashbacks, and looks at like origins of different characters. And right now we're working on issue 3. And it's in a partial state of completion, and I need to finish up these other loose ends and get back to that. But basically the general gist of it is that the first issue starts where the world is kind of in this new kind of gentle peace, and all the villains have just started to come back from like this war that happened about 8 years ago, and their leader, this guy that I designed at Wizard World, just starts to wake up, and he's like, we have to press on, and we have to destroy the world. But we can't do it until we pull out the good guys. And then the second issue is them basically waging a war of atrocities and attrition on all the civilians they can to try to bait these guys out, because the Lords of the Cosmos through issues 1 and 2 have shown up in about 3 panels with like their lower level guys like on the run. And so people even said, well, where the hell are the Lords of the Cosmos? I'm like, issue 3, my friend, issue 3. And again, as it's kind of unfolded in this kind of large sandbox, that we realize that our heroes have been pummeled down pretty bad, and the few of them that are left have gone into this kind of sanctuary of hiding, and that they have to be killed before the villains can take out everybody else. So that's kind of the general crux of it. But we found that through designing all these characters and just throwing out, again, this gigantic sandbox that's maybe only 10% explored, that as more people have touched it and gotten involved, there's been more questions asked, and people have started to fill in the details with us and for us. So we don't even really know everything that's out there yet, but it's kind of been a really fun journey of discovery, building out a very original but respectful nod to that genre that was big in the 80s and even back to the 30s with Flash Gordon. So if that excites you, and you think that's cool, then you should check out the book. There's my big
I dig it. Yeah.
questions.
So yeah, I'm actually kind of curious. So I'm not. I will admit I've said this on previous podcasts. Whenever we had WV PopCon on here, actually, I've never read comic books. I've never really. That's just never. I do a lot of reading, but I've never read comic books. So these issues of yours, I mean, what size are they? Are they? Is this like a weekend read, or what are we looking at here?
So each issue, the first issue was 40 pages. The second one was, I believe, 48. They're a fun lay on the couch with a root beer and maybe read in half an hour type thing each issue. So with the 2 issues, you got maybe an hour of time to sit and really read them. Maybe if you're a fast reader, maybe you can do it all in 45 minutes, half an hour. I don't know.
I kind of dig the idea of like, just from what you're saying, like the Lords of the Cosmos, and they're using the civilians almost as bait to pull out these heroes and trying to get them out so they can. I kind of dig that whole like different take on it. It's not like, hey, we're the heroes, we're here to save it. It's like we're trying to get the heroes to come out of hiding so we can destroy the world.
Yeah,
I think that's a really cool idea.
So we started asking a lot of questions with that genre of, again, sci-fi barbarians, and that if we looked at Skeletor and his crew as like ISIS.
Okay.
But what never made sense about them is they never really put a beating on anybody. They usually just trip and fall and run away.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we realized when we started to build this out was that our He-Man character, whose name is Aegis, that he has his big debut in our next issue, is that he's come to this world with another guy that's like him, like basically a 1B He-Man. And what's revealed is that they showed up at the world and they get into a huge war with this Skeletor type guy, and that at the end of this war, and we reveal this all in detail in the next issue, is that the Skeletor guy basically incinerates his best friend. So which would be the equivalent of like, He-Man sees Man-at-Arms get, set on fire and killed.
Yeah.
And our question was what is the reaction to that if that happened to you? And the way we played it with our hero was that he basically just bailed on the world and was like, I'm just going to go hide in my big military fortress on the side of a mountain. because my best friend basically got wasted by this guy we were trying to fight. We felt that was a little bit more real.
Yeah.
To say, that now there's a cost, and that one of the things we get into in the next issue is like his remaining soldiers and officers are debating about the merits of hiding versus like we're being out in the world. And then issue 3 introduces the fact that like this news of the world basically being set on fire is come back to these guys, and there's not a whole lot of them left anymore because a lot of them have gotten killed in all these conflicts. Is that what price is there with these guys hiding when they're basically the masters of the universe? And then the end of issue 3 will resolve that question into issue 4. But, again, a lot of these properties never ask real questions. One of my favorite comic books of all time was Kingdom Come, which was the Alex Ross book that was all painted from DC years ago. And to me, as a reader, the best part of that book was that we've all read a million Batman comics, right? And we all know that Joker just kills people every time he shows up. And Batman always makes it a point that, by God, he'll never kill Joker.
Yeah.
And you start saying, hey, every time you don't kill Joker, he kills like 6,000 people. Batman, are you helping anyone? And it's never addressed, even though it's a very realistic question.
Yeah.
Like, you remember at the beginning of Kingdom Come, they show Joker beating a court case or getting out of jail, and this new guy just shows up called Magog, and he just takes a spear and just shoots fire and just kills Joker. And he goes, I was tired of it. To me, that caught my attention as a reader, because it's like, wait, he's asking the same stuff we've been saying. Like, Joker's killed how many? He's a serial killer. Why don't we kill this guy? He's very bad. Well, and Magog's like, I agree, I will kill him in the book, and then the story moves forward from that. So part of this was to say we want to tell this story, but we want to do it a little bit differently. We want to do it to a point where there's a different dynamic. They've had this horrific war where the Skeletor type guy's been knocked out, not killed, but he managed to put a massive personal hurting on the He-Man archetype to run that guy out of town, basically. And they're both kind of tapped out, but the bad guys start getting up, and now they're saying, no, we want to fight again, and if you won't show up, we're going to start doing horrific stuff to get you to show up, because we think we can do that to get you to show up, because the bad guys still know these guys are powerful, and that if they don't get rid of them, that there's always going to be a problem. So they want to take care of it right away. And then one of the things in issue 2 that we dig into is that we show the period of time right before these two superhumans basically show up, where there's an earlier group of kind of like a She-Ra type team called the Rainbow Knights, and that one of their members has left and basically fallen in love with the major bad guy, and then she shows up and basically leads an execution of the people that are basically keeping the peace to help the main bad guy out. And then one of those women escapes and then meets the two guys forming the Lords of the Cosmos team in the past, and which will lead to this huge war that they've had in the past, which is like the first world war on the planet. And then our published issues are basically the start of the Second World War. But again, this is like stuff that as we've done it and made it, it started to become clear to us. So we've tried to put like little feeders and hints and stuff. So like in issue 2, there's all kinds of stuff that's like, please go read Lost Tales of Aiden issue 7. Well, none of that stuff even exists, but we want to try to give you those nods like you're reading something that's got all this backstory and a million back issues and a TV show. And on the back of each issue, there's a toy we had made. So there's even like a toy line. Well, we had one reviewer that was like, I missed these toys in the 80s. I don't get it.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Right. So that's kind of the general gist of it. And look, I'm not going to say our books are perfect. They're a work in progress. And again, now I'm eager to get you guys to read them and tell me what you think, because, people have said, I love it. It could have been better. Didn't like the pace. Didn't like this. Didn't like those pinups. And I'm like, all right, cool. But you just kind of move on and say, cool, I'm going to take all that feedback and try to make these books better. And I think we have a really cool vision for where they're going that is cool. And it's a little bit different. It's different enough that it's a good hook if you like that genre.
I like the whole idea of it, like the basically the bad guys are trying to draw out the good guys that are in hiding. Like you kind of get that sometimes between like comics and like movies and things like that, but it's not focused on that much. It's always like an afterthought, like at the beginning of the movie or at the beginning of whatever you're reading, and the basis becomes like, the good guys fight against that. Like, it seems like this is more of a story about how the I guess the bad guys in this case are drawing out the good guys so they can take over the world. It seems to me like a cool take on it, and I'm interested in reading it, honestly. Like,
good.
Yeah.
I'll say what seems especially interesting to me is, so I feel like the theme in the book kind of sounds like, at least from your description, that it ties into one of my favorite book series ever. And I've read a lot of Warhammer 40,000, the Black Library stuff. And one of the things that I always felt reading those books, and I feel the same way about the superhero movies and superhero stories that I've read, is that generally these superheroes tend to have superhero reactions to things. And so you almost kind of have, at times you can almost have kind of like a disconnect, because they have these reactions to situations where most normal people probably would not have that same reaction. Kind of like what you were talking about with your He-Man character, where, he witnesses a friend die and he's like, whoa, I'm going to go chill in my cave. Like, this is heavy.
Very much.
And I remember that there was a book series, Gaunt's Ghosts, that I had read, and it was like set in the Warhammer universe, but it was based on all the foot soldiers that just get murked in every battle. And like them trying to deal with like living amongst these gods, basically. And you get actual human reactions to these ridiculously insane things that are happening. So I find that very intriguing.
Yeah.
I've always...
We had one guy write us a letter, and he said, this is like a Warhammer 40K like story. And I was like, ooh, wow. I was like, someone just compared us to the granddaddy of tabletop miniature games. And I was like, that was a pretty wild connection for me. So... And I am passingly familiar with Warhammer 40K through some guy that does these really dope documentaries about the game on YouTube. I think his name's like Lutoris or something like that. He does hundreds of these videos about the game. And I like that universe because it just seems to be ridiculously expansive, and it's like there's a million other stories to tell.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
But, like what is that reaction? Because, again, if you had someone that you cared about basically murdered in front of you, I mean, what would your, like, let's go fight more? Would it be? I don't know. I mean, but we just wanted to put a different spin. Like, what is this guy's reaction to seeing his brother being incinerated in front of him by this guy that's like a robotic corpse that just spouts off like evil non sequiturs.
You put that like human aspect onto your main hero. Yeah. Like, you get that human aspect on a lot of like heroes, like quote unquote heroes, but it's not that emotional. Like, I'm gonna lock myself away from society.
Well, your
like
superhuman characters have superhuman reactions.
But like I like the idea of making this superhuman human. Like, I think that's really a unique way to look at it. And I haven't delved too deep into comics much ever, but like, I like the idea of the whole, putting that real human reaction on your hero, and then having the world, like, these basically like your Hitlers being out like, hey, I'm doing this. What are you going to do about it? Like, I'm going to destroy the world. Well, and, come fight me. I think it's really cool.
A perfect example of what you were saying earlier of, your Skeletor character, that he's kind of like your ISIS. Yeah. Well, how controversial of an issue was that? Us sending American troops into Syria to fight ISIS. That was not a unanimous agreement thing. It's not like the United States public just all got together and were like, yes, this is what we're doing. Syria. And it's like, even if you pick the kind of cliched bad guy, the Nazis, if you actually do your research, like, a lot of Americans did not want to fight that war. Had Pearl Harbor not happened, we probably wouldn't have ended up there. And in a lot of the superhero movies that are out now, especially, the plot lines are just so, cut and dried, black and white. Yeah. Here's a bad guy, punch him in the face, and there's really
that's what I like about that's what I like about like Jason, I like about your story. It's like it's not that way.
It's complicated.
It's got more depth than just you're like, hey, we're good, hey, we're bad, let's fight it out, and the good guys are going to win. It's like, from what you described to me, it's like there's a good chance that the bad guys might actually take this. Like, which doesn't happen often.
So there was a really great documentary that I watched as a kid in the 80s on PBS called World at War. And, again, just another kind of, odd element to this book was when these heroes were fighting this war that we haven't shown you yet, we're going to show part of it as a flashback in issue 3 with a military battle from that war. And one of the things we talked about as a creative team was like we wanted to put all these weird, like one of the characters is a bug with a 12-gauge shotgun and like a robot samurai and all these rando characters. But we wanted to put them into like World at War, where they had, if you remember that show, it was made by Britain or the BBC, and it had like little animated flags with arrows. And Rommel moved across Egypt, like a little German flag would like slide across the map, and then they would show like footage of like, black and white film of like tanks driving around. Then they would like interview some guys like, I'm an 80-year-old veteran from like the English Army or whatever.
Yeah.
And like, so what we really want to do is to show that these heroes were, after these superhumans showed up, they go after this guy. They're the ones going proactively after him in the past, right? And that they are basically involved in World War II with like rando superhuman characters and like creatures and like, walking gigantic lobsters with artillery cannons on their back. But it's like really serious that like these hero leaders are like, they're the generals. And like back in the day, they were like, hell yeah, we're here to fight the bad guys, until the bad guy paced one of them really hard and is like, you want to keep fighting me?
Yeah.
That basically ends that war. But we're kind of given like an insight back into that through issue 3 to start saying like, whoa, where are the lords? Because people said, where are the lords of the cosmos? You have a comic with these guys, and they're not even in it, except a couple of them running away.
It sounds like a darker, more science fiction-y, and saying darker is, in my opinion, it's a compliment of Watchmen, because I thought that Watchmen did a very good job of introducing sort of that human element with, you get to see the comedian and Dr. Manhattan fighting in the Vietnam War. And, you have these very complex issues of like, how do we go about this? And it sounds to me like you guys are hitting all of those notches, which Watchmen is actually the only graphic novel that I ever read. So it's making me more and more interested in reading these.
So one of the cool things about Watchmen, and again, I would never try to say this book is Watchmen because I think Watchmen's kind of an untouchable, perfect book, is that one of the things I really liked about Watchmen was it just kind of threw you in at like issue 1 was like, this is the end of their like, 500 issue run.
Right.
And like you didn't need to read all those books to start saying, well, what do you mean? Because like, and again, so one of the things we did was like, this is kind of the end of the road for the Lords of the Cosmos. That's where stuff's going. Like there's an end, and this is the end of the road. Like there's been all the stuff that's gone on before, and like we keep throwing little flashbacks to you with these like backup stories, and like things are said like as in issue 2 when the main bad guy shows back up, like they capture like a human general that's like defending like the frontier, and this guy's like, dude, you got killed like 9 years ago, or this can't be, and he's like, I'm here, I can assure you I'm here, and then his men like execute this guy. So it's like, wait, hold on, what? And I always liked that about Watchmen, that they didn't need to show you every single thing. And I'm going to tell you, if you look, one of the coolest characters ever was Darth Vader. And when I was a kid, he was just wasting people in Empire Strikes Back, and you were like, hell yeah, this guy just kills people, And like there was a little bit of humanizing of him in Return of the Jedi, and it was like that was great. And then, holy hell, they pounded that character into crap. Where it's he's a whiny little smart joke. So it's like sometimes this stuff works better when we don't need to read 800 issues of The Comedian.
Yeah,
right. We saw him killed. And we got little flashbacks of him being an asshole in Vietnam and whatever. That's it. We don't need 800 issues of it. It's good enough the way it is. And I think that's a huge problem with some of these things. Like we have to examine like. I watched Solo recently on Netflix. Oh, my goodness. I mean, it's like, here's how he got his gun. Here's how he got his vest. It's like, wow, do we need to know everything Like, you're killing it. Like, just can't you just show up and just be like, I'm here, and I have this big bear dude, and I shoot people.
Yeah, and I still haven't finished that movie. Like, I've fallen asleep twice watching it. Like,
see, I'm still waiting for them to ruin Yoda.
Well, so I guess to me, that's the beauty of Watchmen is like they told you enough. Yeah. We don't need to know every adventure of the comedian. We got all the stuff we needed. That was it.
Yeah.
It adds that mystery to it, almost like, you know who this character is, and like you form your own thoughts about it. Like, you come out with a movie about him or like a comic book fully about him, it's like you shatter those like childhood or your thoughts about that character. The same thing with like you were saying, the Darth Vader, like, from the 70s, like, loved it, and then you come out with these bullshit fucking like episode 1, 2, and 3, and it was like, cool, I hate Darth Vader now. Like, it's like,
well, and
he's been pounded into. We know so much about him now. We don't care.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
And I think in the 80s and 70s, he was the best. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, you're good. I was just gonna say, I think for me, a personal taste of mine is that I prefer to read books over watching movies. It's time constraints. I only read books that I think are going to be good. And for me, the reason that I've always enjoyed reading books so much more, and I think it's a good tie-in for what you guys are talking about, is that when you read a book, the character becomes the character that you've made it in your mind.
Yeah.
And the story is different for every person that reads it, because the world that they are imagining and the characters that they are creating in their own mind is completely unique to them. Mm-hmm. And you have that same sort of aspect whenever you have a character like the comedian, where you don't really know all of his ins and outs. You kind of know like a brief summary. And what I love about it is that it's almost more realistic, because if you imagine yourself as, the reader, as a person in that universe, that's probably all you would get to know. Mm-hmm. Is the clips that you see in the news and the stories that you hear about from people that met him one time, and this is what he said, and you heard these rumors about him, and it's just so much more realistic. Whereas most of the time, you're not going to know everybody's day-to-day activities. You're not going to know how Han Solo got his gun.
Yeah.
You're not going to know all of these little details, and there's just no mystery. There's no creativity. There's no uniqueness. It just becomes bland at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one of the real problems I have with entertainment in general is a lot of it's morphed into, in South Park summed it up better than I can. Remember that? Remember that? Remember the berries?
Yep.
Remember? A lot of the stuff. It's just remember Lando. Remember Millennium Falcon. They're not giving us anything new. It's like, what's your new idea? Oh wait, no one cares about those. But you're like, look, it's remember Stormtroopers, and I think a lot of entertainment has gone that way. Mm-hmm. Even if you look at Watchmen. I mean, before Watchmen, they did that, and there was a lot of mixed reactions. People were just saying, like, man, you're just really just, did we really need this? And the answer is you didn't. But it's like, if we put remember Watchmen, that I got to get the comedian comic.
Yeah.
And did you need it? And really, this goes back to our whole legal discussion about fan art versus original art, that if all I draw is Deadpool eating a taco, see, we've gone full circle back to this taco. that the question is, what am I even a creator, or am I just an imitator? And you can have the ability to draw stuff, and you can be pretty damn good, but can you make up an original concept? Mm-hmm. And that's a real rub, because you can say, look, I can draw this. I can get a photograph, and I can draw it exactly. And that's cool, and that's a talent. But that's a lot different than saying what is in your head that should excite me, that I want to get excited about. It's tough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like, are you a musician or are you an artist?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, can you go out there and play other people's music, or can you sit and write your own song?
Yeah.
Front to back, like. Well,
and if you look at it, and he's kind of on the public consciousness, Freddie Mercury Mercury could knock out great music, and he could write music. So he was a double threat.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's why he got so damn famous, because he could do both. It wasn't like, well, he's very good at singing these existing songs, and he was a hell of a singer, but he could make great songs and sing them. at a high level. So, again, I think that's the problem with a lot of these things right now is this, like, I love Watchmen. Make up a new one.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to this series, the TV series.
I didn't even know they were making.
Isn't it on HBO though?
It's not on HBO. It's on like Amazon, I think.
Oh,
or maybe it is Either way, even if it is HBO,
HBO
the movie was good. It still couldn't capture the graphic novel. There doesn't need to be a TV series. It's unnecessary.
Yeah. Well, it's just like what they're doing in horror. There's no original ideas anymore. It's just regurgitation, re-envisioning, just going back to what we were saying. There's no original ideas.
Yeah.
It's like all the big money holders decide that they need to invest in what's safe, and an idea that's already made a lot of money is pretty safe.
Well, and Jason, I think that you kind of touched on this a little bit earlier. There, you kind of have this problem where you have people who say one thing and then they want something totally different. They say, "Oh, we want original horror. We want something new." And then something new comes out, like Hereditary. I don't know if you saw Hereditary or not. I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah.
A lot of people hated it because it wasn't, in my opinion, the reason that a lot of people hated it was because it wasn't just
the conventional.
It wasn't the
demon
convention. Exactly. It wasn't what people
that
expect.
That is a double-edged sword.
Well, you know what they want? You know what they want? They want to see Friday the 13th part zillion.
Right. They want Rob Zombie to come back and direct another movie that's awful.
And for the record, I thought Hereditary was amazing, and I loved it for all the reasons you just said, because you didn't know where it was going. It wasn't like, remember this?
So uncomfortable. That movie made me so uncomfortable.
That's what I try to tell people. It's the kind of movie where I like to call that atmospheric horror, like The Witch. If you like
The
that
Witch,
movie.
very Kubrick. Very
Kubrick.
So the vibe that you get from the ride,
very Kubrick,
is very Kubrick.
It doesn't. Nothing is. Not very many things are going to come right out and punch you in the face and scare you.
Right.
But
you can only think of like 3 or 4 things where it was like you saw something crazy, but
so uncomfortable the whole
tension.
Time.
Yeah, it's the tension.
No, The Witch and Hereditary, I felt were both, again, they had the balls to do. I mean, there was nothing in those films that it was just like they stood on their own because they had balls. I mean, it's like, here's a film. I mean, it was just everything was original. And those films had to stand on their own merit. It wasn't like, oh wow, it's Halloween. Here's Jamie Lee Curtis again, and you're like, wow. I'm so excited to watch a lady reprise the same role 40 years later, fighting stuff. I mean,
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it yet.
It's just, I mean, it just seems like that's the kind of problem that Jason, like you were talking about earlier, where people say that they want something unique, but then they go to the cons and, like the way that you put it, can I throw money at you harder for basically just prints of Deadpool eating a taco? And I'm
not going to say the name, but there is a person that I see at shows, and all they do is they just take screen caps of like famous images. Now they could be comic book images, or they could be TV stills, and what they do is they put them on Photoshop, and they literally take all the detail out. So like the faces are just like a flesh colored oval, and this vendor, it's 5D.
I think I know what you're talking about.
And it, like, I look at it and I'm just like, this is crazy. I don't know why anyone would pay for this stuff. And that individual, or if it's multiple people, I don't even know if it's even one person. It's just like they can knock out work in 5 minutes.
Yeah,
it's like, oh wait, what? I'll take the new Assassin's Creed box and I'll just simplify the art to like shapes. And people are like, oh, they can't throw money at it fast enough. And you're just like, it's awful.
They're playing like a mean trick on the like a cruel association game. It's like, oh, you remember this, don't you? Don't you want to buy it?
Well, I mean, look at Ready Player One. I don't know if you guys saw Ready Player One or not. Mm-hmm. It was okay.
I did not, but it looked kind of dumb to me. But go ahead. I'm curious.
So it was okay. It wasn't terrible, but it was so obvious that the only reason that it did as well as it did was it just constantly did the member, right? It's just all the time you're just getting fan service of like, oh, there's Batman, oh, there's Godzilla, oh, there's King Kong, oh, and you can tell that. Now I haven't read the book yet, and I haven't decided yet, but you can tell if you're somebody who enjoys movies and books and stories, you can tell that there is so much there that they left out to get more references in.
Yeah.
And it's so disappointing because you can just
me?
you can just clearly see that they cut out a lot of very integral story to get more pop culture references.
Yep.
Wasn't that Spielberg?
Maybe.
I don't.
Yes, it was. He was involved in it.
Oh, that hurts my heart because he was such an innovator. Now he's just milking pop culture.
But that's
like a
just
whore.
that. Honestly, I've been noticing it more and more and more and more in movies. So I just watched recently Hold the Dark on Netflix. It's pretty decent. It's really confusing though. So after the movie was over, I looked it up and it was from a book, and the book was very highly rated. So I read the book.
Was that the Alaskan town film?
Yes.
Okay.
They cut so much like main story, not even like, side story that doesn't really
Character
but like
development.
stuff that when it's not included in the movie doesn't make any fucking sense.
It didn't make sense.
And
Was that the movie
glad
with the
you
guy
said
from
Westworld.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I watched that. I dug the movie.
but it doesn't make any
It
sense.
doesn't make any sense.
You
Because
feel
It was
they-
very
dark and weird.
unsatisfied.
And
Because
like
they
at the end of the
took-
movie, I was like, that was cool, but I have no fucking clue what happened.
Yeah, because they took almost all of the story out of it. And I don't know if they were just like, hey, we have the guy from Westworld and we've got some wolves. People will like this.
Yeah.
And we'll just make it real edgy.
That's how-
But there's just no story. I don't know if maybe it's just the culture is shifting and people just
is.
want more like instant gratification.
It is. That's exactly what it is.
But it's very disappointing. I will say
Well,
that.
I'm telling you, I mean, the member berries,
It's perfect. Like it's
perfect. And I'm telling you, Comic Con is just very fascinating because at this point, most of the people I like to talk to on Artist Alley, I like to talk to people that are making their own stuff because, again, if you don't understand the difference, it all looks the same. But, the guy just drawing, stills from famous movies and stuff versus the guy that's like schlepping out his own book. I mean, they're two different animals. I mean, to do your own original stuff, again, it's live without a net.
yeah.
Are you selling anything that's original to you, that's your idea? And and if the answer is no, and you can say, well, I still made money. Again, are you just a person like turning dollars, or are you a creator?
Yeah.
And they're two different things. You could be a creator making your own nickel, but are you just schlepping out stuff that's popular? I mean, I'm not kidding you. I've wondered if you could just download images and sell them. Well, actually, I know the answer. There was a guy that was outed for this years ago, like 4 or 5 years ago in Pittsburgh. He his entire portfolio was fake.
Oh wow.
Like all this guy did was he would just go to DeviantArt and just like pull down like really dope art from like variety people. Even his show banner was like other people's art. But there's so much art that people would just see him like, holy hell, man, your art's dope.
Yeah.
And it was really good stuff. And he was making a lot of money. And what got him in trouble was he sold a quote original piece of art, and he sold it to a girl for a couple $100, and then she just got this bug in her head that was like, this seems so familiar. And she looked it up, and it was like some big time DC artist. It was his art. He just light boxed it and resold it as his own. And then she went to Bleeding Cool, I believe it was, and then those guys, once they got their hooks in them, I mean, their minions, literally, it was like everything on his website, everything that he had was like, this is, a Joe Quesada. This is an art, like it was everything.
Yeah.
And
Jesus.
he exited the scene, but I talked to a friend of his afterwards, and I was like, why did he do it? And he goes, Jason, you have no idea how much money this guy's making thousands of dollars. It shows that you might make $200 that, $300 that.
That's so fucked.
And-
Like as an artist, like as a musician, as an artist, like
makes
that
your blood boil.
fucking pisses me
Yeah.
off.
Yeah.
Like that. Poof. Like somebody
What a
taking
whore.
your stuff just to, and claiming it as their own, like that goes right through me. Like I know a lot of people out there probably won't really understand that, but like until you've created something and seeing it shat on by the the community or whatever, only to see somebody out there that's stealing other people's good work and then making profit off of it, whenever you can't even make $1 off of your own stuff, it's like fuck that guy. Like,
and this
that
guy's
guy.
stuff was like all-star. I mean, it was an all-star cast. It was it was like it would be like the equivalent of me tabling next to like Jim Lee, Art Adams, and Todd McFarlane kind of morphed into like one guy.
that would
You know what I mean? So you're it's like, man, this guy's stuff's awesome, and it's like, hell yeah, it is.
yeah,
Just the balls.
Yeah.
What really gets
Yeah, it
me
is.
is the balls and the ego on the human that would be responsible for doing something like that. You know what I mean?
He literally had nothing original. Everything, even the art on his banner, was other people's stuff.
He probably had other people print it for him too. Like he probably didn't even go through that process.
Son of a bitch.
Who knows?
Like,
So,
Yeah,
Jason,
He was rewarded handsomely for doing that. And look, I'm not saying that everyone's doing that. I think that's the
Oh,
minority,
yeah.
all minority. But again, next time you guys are at a show, and I don't know how many shows you guys go to, but it's just interesting just to kind of look at everyone real closely and just what do you have that's original?
yeah.
And they may have a lot, but
I tend to veer more towards like like it's cool to see somebody like drawing a Rick and Morty piece where they're like in real life or something like that. Like it's cool, but to me, I veer more towards like the art that I haven't seen before because it is original, and I can appreciate more original art. Like yeah, it's fun and cool to see these popular comic book characters or TV characters or movies in different situations. Like it's cool. It's still your idea, but I still like to see the original art myself.
sure.
So, Jason, sorry we were on so many tangents earlier, and it never crossed my mind to ask this until now, but where can people find your artwork?
Oh, yeah. I should probably touch on that, yeah.
Well, that's a great question. So I try to make it simple. The easiest place to buy my art would probably be Etsy. So I'm just on Etsy as Lenox Art Emporium. I sell my T-shirts. I sell my comic books. I sell my prints there. So you can just look me up on Etsy at Lenox Art Emporium. Lords of the Cosmos is for sale at Comixology. And if you want to follow me, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Lenox Artist. I'm on Facebook at Jason Lenox Illustrator. I'm on DeviantArt too. It's Jason Lenox something or other on DeviantArt. Shame on me, I don't even know the link to that. It's so long. And then I have my website, jasonlenox.com, which is kind of like an archive source for all my art. And then it has a list of my calendar of shows I'll be at. So if you're like, I'm so burning to argue with this guy in person, you can go on there and ask. But yeah, so those are the easy places to hit me up at on the interwebs.
Awesome.
Cool. Is there anything else you want to cover before we wrap it up?
It's a great question.
We haven't actually touched on. I know we've gotten on like a lot of tangents and
We do this.
things. Yeah, with that's our
It's our thing.
yeah.
I would have loved to have said, have you guys seen Hereditary? It's so good, but you guys stole my thunder on that. So I think yeah. Who knew that an 8-year-old girl getting her head torn off could be such great family entertainment? But yeah, that goat was a real goat.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I thought it was CGI, but I read an article that was apparently a 220-pound real male goat, and apparently it was completely unpredictable in the film, and then it hurt some of the actors. It was so violent.
Oh, wow.
Wait, what goat?
In The Witch?
Was
Hereditary.
Yes, in The Witch.
Or the
Yes.
Witch.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. I thought
I was
so.
trying to
I
think
thought
of
so.
where there was a goat in Hereditary, and I was like, I don't remember.
You just
a goat.
look at that goat and you're like, I can't trust
Dude,
this thing.
He looked.
It's not to be
mean.
trusted.
That movie
Real
was
mean.
Yeah.
just the
No, well, the good thing
oof.
is both films had happy endings, so like everyone was a big winner, and
That's true, actually. If you think
no,
about it.
both films had happy endings, man. They were great movies. They were family fun. But no, guys, this was a great chat. I hope to see you guys in West Virginia again. Like I said, we'll know in a couple weeks if that's still good to go. And awesome.
Yeah, we'll definitely do a. If you're at PopCon, we'll do a follow up. We plan on having a booth there, and we're going to do like kind of the same thing we did last year. Where we're going to sit down with the vendors and things and kind of catch up, and then we can definitely catch up with you and kind of get an update on what's happening over there. So we're excited.
And just send me a reminder, and I'll shoot you all the PDFs for Lords of the Cosmos, so you can slave away and read them.
Okay, yeah, definitely, awesome. That'd be awesome. Yeah, and I'll be messaging you as well to get any of your social media stuff. That way, I can link it in the description below, and that way people can actually just
shoot me a note, and I'll just shoot you all as a big list, because it's like I'm a DVR on something.
Yeah, you said a lot of stuff, and I was like, "Oh, that's a lot of stuff." I'm just gonna like let you guide me in that direction. So.
Just send me a reminder, and I'll just send you a list, and you need to like copy and paste, and you'll seem like you were taking notes furiously.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Yes. Make me look better. Make me look better.
All right, guys, are we good?
Yeah, yes, sir, we are. Thanks so much, man. Like, this is awesome.
All right, guys. Hey, have a great week. And whenever this goes live, just shoot me a note, and I'll be happy to post it out and tell people, listen to this show, damn it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'll definitely let you know.
Thanks so much.
Yep. Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.